Poppy, how did you survive in the war?
How did I survive the war? Well, in 1939, the Germans came from one side, and then the Russians came from the other side. And the Russian soldiers were in our town, and then the German and the Russian divided our country in two. And our town was in the German side. But when the Russians went back, we had a chance. There were some Jewish soldiers who talked Yiddish, and they told me that in the Soviet Union you can get free education. So that's one of the reasons. When they went back, I went with them, and in Russia you could survive. They weren't as bad as the Germans. I was born in a small town, Helm. It had about 18,000 Jews inside, and although we lived in poverty, we didn't even realize that we lived in poverty. Really, we had a great spiritual life. We were engaged. We all practically were engaged in cultural and political life. Like we were four brothers, and we had like four newspapers. Everybody had was a different ideological. One of my brother was very religious, Avram, and he belonged to Aguda. And my older brother Herschel, he was a general Zionist. He was very active. As a matter of fact, he worked at that time. The British had a mandate on Palestine, and in order to go there, you needed a certificate. In order to get a certificate, sometimes you had to work 3 years hard labor, because to get used to work the land. So Herschel did, and he came back. In the meantime, the war broke out, so he never went towards then Palestine. We had a yeshiva in which my father was second in command. We had a religious organization called Aguda, Zionist religious, and we had Mizrahi, a little less Zionist, and we had socialist Zionists called Palestine. As a matter of fact, they used to march May the 1st. They used to march one side of the town, then the Polish Zionists would march on another side of the town.
Mm-hmm.
We had an organization called the Bund, who said that we don't need a Jewish homeland. We have to fight for our rights where we live. Even though, like I said, we were in poverty, but it seems to be a high spiritual life. Like when it came to Shabbat, we believed that you get an extra neshama yisera. You almost felt like it. Like Friday afternoon, I would go with my father to the mikveh, and we come back and we change to the only Shabbat suit that we had. But we would go to the synagogue and sing along, and come home and then sing along again, and have a long dinner in which we talked. I remember some of the wisdom of my father, I still remember. And of course we couldn't, and then the candles would light out. I still remember we still would talk deep into the night, because we're not allowed to turn off, or we'd call somebody to turn off the light. And everybody seems to be involved politically. We had every organization had locals, like would go. The socialists would have a local, would go there, they'd play ping pong or whatever. And my brother Avram, who was religious, you go there and you could do evening services and water and study. And interesting enough, we had a little underworld. I remember a guy named Chaim Costa. He didn't have a gun, but if he needed somebody to punish, he would hire him who would beat him up. He wouldn't kill him, but he didn't have a gun.
Poppy, did you ride cars or horses?
Well, now town really, we didn't have a car. We really didn't have horses. We really walked every place. I walked to school, to my Hebrew school, and to the Polish school. Only if we had to go to another town, then we took a train. But in town, everybody just walked. We weren't afraid to walk a long way, really, like 2 kilometers. We still walked. When I was 4 years, my mommy took me to a cheder where you spent almost the whole day learning Hebrew. Aleph, Bet, like Kametz Aleph, or Kametz Bet, Bo. Probably when I was 8 or 9, I could already do the prayers, and at 10, I probably every Shabbat my father would test me the whole parsha, including the trap, the whole parsha and the trap. But then when I was 7 years old, I went half a day. I went to public school and half a day to a cheder.
How could you walk that far when you were a kid?
Well, my town wasn't that big, and also kids used to be. You can get used to walk longer. You really don't have. In this country, if you sometimes when 1 block, I ask my children to go to the store. It's a block away, so they ask for the keys from the car. Not so in our place. It was like a mile away. We didn't mind walking. We did a lot of walking. This was even healthier. Maybe that's why right now I'm stronger, because I did all the walking when I was a child.
How far did you walk to school, and how what?
Yeah, I went to school. Like in the morning, I went to public school. I had to walk far away. It's probably maybe more than a mile. And it was a big school, a little similar to the schools that are here. It was big, as one big building. I think there were 3 schools. I remember 2 of them. One of them were for Jewish kids, and 2 of them were for Catholic kids. But in the afternoon, I would change. In the public school, we had to wear uniforms, and we couldn't wear a hat in the public school. But when I came home, I had to change and go to the Hebrew school, what was called cheder, which in Hebrew means a room, which sometimes was just one room, and sometimes it was the home of the teacher. And this lasted like this till I was bar mitzvah at 13, and then when I was 14, my father died.
Poppy, what was your house like? How many rooms did you have? And was it fun?
Yeah, we had 3 rooms. We actually called it 2 rooms in a kitchen. And we were my mother, and father, and 4 brothers. 6 people lived in 2 rooms actually. In the bedroom, probably slept like 4 people. In the living room, combination dining room, slept another 3 people. And in the kitchen, no, we didn't have any dishwasher. We didn't have. We had an oven. Like we made for Shabbat. My mother would make challah, and she would have to make ready for Shabbat. she would have to work a whole day Friday. In wintertime, she would stay up all night because everything she would have to do from scratch. Like to make fish, she would go to the market, buy some live fish, we come home, clean him, and and chop him up. And I remember I used to help chop. I had to clip it, chop, 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 chop. And a whole day Friday would be ready, work to be ready for the Shabbat.
How did your mom do the chicken and did you have to and like was it easy?
No, it was very hard. My mother would come to the market first of all and pick up. For some reason, they would pick up the fattest chicken. I remember they would blow at the neck, see if it's really fat. The fatter seemed to be the better. Would come home and would send me to the guy to the shochet who would kill the chicken. I could never look. I would run away to see. And then we came home, and she had to clean it pick up from the feathers, and then cut it up, uh, and uh, and then to cook was still a big job. To make a fire, we had from wood started a fire and in order to cook the chicken. So they had a very hard life really. But we seem not to realize actually. Like I said, when it comes Shabbat, everybody seemed to feel so happy and spiritual, and we'd go Friday night to the synagogue, like a whole Friday evening. The whole family would be together and talking.
Now it's 2004 and these are the three things I like to do for fun. Play the Monopoly that Ty has. Play with my family or play with some balls.
Yeah,
What do you do for fun, Poppy?
we had domino, we played domino, we played checkers, and I remember every Saturday night my oldest brother Zavel with my father would play chess. As soon as they came back, obviously wintertime was earlier and summertime later, they would play chess. Us as kids, we play outside. We didn't have so many games like you have, but we managed to have fun. We played the hide and seek. There were other games. Even in Cheder, usually the teacher had a lot of kids, so while he paid attention to one kid, the other kids still in class, we still played some games. We had something with string. I forgot what you call it. Ettle battle was called in Yiddish. I don't know. Yeah. Or with little stones we played. We were creative without spending money that didn't have on games. We seem to entertain each other.
Poppy, you mentioned that you went to synagogue, and I was curious if there was one synagogue or a lot of different synagogues. Were they the same denominations or?
Okay, they were all the same. We only had what we are right now we would call Orthodox. The term Orthodox didn't exist at that time, but by and large, they did the same what the Orthodox doing right here. But there was one big synagogue. Then were a lot of small ones, what they call Stiebler. They call them here too, Stiebler. It means there were several dynasties of rabbis. Like was the Belzer rabbi, the Lubliner rabbi, and they lived in a certain city and they had their Stiebler in every town. And once in a year they would come around and gave them sermons. So there were a whole number of small synagogues called shtibla. You were usually loyal to one. You always went to the same one. I know we went to a Lublina shtibla. And then I remember there was a belza, like you know the song about bells, meinst du, alle bells? It's on the tape that your mother loves.
Okay.
And that was a big, I remember that was a big synagogue. They had a lot of people who
Leah, I understand you had 4 brothers. Could you tell us more about them and what they were like? Especially when they were kids, what were they like, from what you can remember?
we were 4 brothers. I had 3 brothers. We were 4 brothers
4
all
together. Yeah.
Well, I was a kid and they were much older. One was 9 years older than I am, and one was 11, and the oldest must have been maybe another 14 or 15 years older than I am. The oldest one worked as a bookkeeper.
One, two, three.
He was the smartest. And he got married in 1931, so I was like 7 years old, to another town. And I remember every summer when we had vacation from school, I used to come and visit him. And next to him was Hai's father. So he also worked in a dry goods store. He used to work. And next to him was my religious brother, Abraham. He also did some kind of work. My oldest brother, who must have been like 15 years older than I was, he got married in 1931 when I was 7, and he opened a dry goods store in another town, not far from, like 40 kilometers from us, a little town named Lubomir. I heard later that only four Jews survived from the whole town. And so I don't remember when he was a teenager. When I was born, he was already here. So I remember more, but I remember going every summer to him, and I spent for several weeks. And next to him, I remember Herschel, your father. He worked in a store too. And next to him was Abraham. My father made a living there was not much money going around, but he got some paid from the religious school. He was second command in this religious school. And he also was, they called a bore, it's like a lawyer. Very often, if you have a dispute, even business dispute, you didn't go to court, but you went to a rabbi to solve it. And you hired a lawyer, it's called a bore, who went by the law of the Talmud actually. And so my father got paid a little bit from that too.
Yeah, I was curious about your sister, what you remembered about her.
My sister Sheva, Fege Sheva was her name, and I think she died from tuberculosis. And as far as I remember, she went to gymnasium, which is like a high school, and she must have died as a late teenager. That's all I remember. I vaguely remember the funeral. Like I said, I was maybe like 3, and I didn't go. I don't think I went to the cemetery. But vaguely remember they took her from the room away. That's all I remember about my sister. More I remember, obviously mostly about Avram and Herschel, and from my older brother Zanla, I remember mostly. Actually, when they were engaged, I remember she came to our town And I remember when they were offered tea, they always left something in the glass. They explained to me that was the manner at that time. You don't eat, when you offer food, you don't eat everything. You leave something on the plate.
Was it an arranged marriage, or
Yeah,
did
it
they?
was an arranged marriage. Yeah, it was from another town. Uh, she was pretty actually, and her parents were rich, and they helped him put in business. So, and I have a picture from them actually. I had several pictures. I didn't have any pictures, obviously, when I ran away from home. I couldn't take any pictures. But when I came to Baltimore and I had a cousin, Harvey, she had some pictures we sent her before the war. So one of the pictures was of my sister, and one of the pictures was of my father. I still have it. And then one of the pictures was of my brother, Zavel, when he was engaged, when she came to our town, they were engaged.
So that was an arranged marriage. Was that common? And was he the only one of your brothers that was married?
He was only one of my brother who married before the war, and arranged marriages were very common. Although they started in our town already, boys and girls went out together, but arranged marriage was still common. Probably more arranged than full out. Although they seemed to love, as far as I remember, they had a good marriage. They loved each other.
You were telling us about the arranged marriages. I think I wanted to ask you more about your mom and what she was like.
My mom was beautiful. She was about 10 years younger than my father, and she was a very devoted Jewish religious life. She wore a sheitel, of course. Of course, I've seen her when she comes. She has really long hair before she put on her sheitel. And she would get up in the morning before we went to school. Of course, everything would be fresh, and bring in those fresh flats and bagel. And I will be saying the prayers before we went to school. She would make breakfast, make sure we always have fresh food. And then when we went to school, she went shopping for dinner. She went to the market and everything. Of course, we didn't have a refrigerator, so everything had to be bought every day freshly. She would go on the market and sometimes bargain. She had a basket. I remember she had a basket there and went to the market and picked up everything fresh, vegetables, and it had to be fresh fish or whatever they need. And then we came home. She would do the cleaning, and cooking was a big job. They had a stove. I've seen it on a farm in Delaware. They have those round thing. You put some wood in the stove, and you put those round thing to make for a bigger pot. You put bigger. Have you seen this? No. Anyhow, you had to, it was on wood, and you had to start, and it was a big job to make a dinner. And we also had a big oven where Friday she would bake the challah. We put wood, and when it was already cold, we put in the challah, and they got baked.
Now, was that in your home?
In my home, yes.
How big was your home? What did your home look like?
We were part of a big building. It was maybe like 50 apartments in it. Of course, we didn't have any elevators. It was like 3 or 4 levels. And we had, like I said before, we had 3 rooms. And actually, we didn't realize that we were poor, but we didn't realize that we were poor. It seems everybody else was poor, so you didn't. I remember being like always joked and laughed, and I used to go with my religious brother, like in the evening, to his place. They would say the evening services, and after the service, everybody seemed to have a joke, and they laughed. And uh, I think it was a sort of happy spiritual life.
Now, were there any parts of your neighborhood that you were aware of that were more wealthy, or everybody
No,
you knew was Jewish? I'm trying to picture the whole community.
the whole community basically was Jewish. The Catholics, the center of the city were Jewish. All the stores all the stores were in Jewish center. On Saturday you couldn't find, if you wanted to buy a quart of milk, you couldn't find it, or a loaf of bread. No way. On Sunday, which was prohibited by law, Sunday by law was prohibited to open the stores, but they would close the store and stay inside. And when there was no policeman, you go in the back door and buy some stuff. But otherwise, with Yiddish, you could get away. You didn't need even to learn Polish. You go to the store, everything get in Yiddish. And if you need to go to the cobbler, it was Yiddish. To the tailor, everything you get away in Yiddish or everything else.
Now, when you say the police, were there any Jewish policemen?
No, there were no Jewish. The policemen were all Catholics, and they had fun with the Jews. I remember even as a kid I would be afraid. I remember there was in the corner, there was a bakery, and there was a place to sit down at the window, and that, I don't know, it was against the law. The policeman made the law. No, you couldn't sit. If he'd catch you, he would hit you, even a kid like 8 or 9 years. So, and also they would come in and something wasn't in order, and he would write down a ticket and fine you, say like a zlot or $1. And if you were not happy, so right on the spot he would make it $2. They were anti-Semitic, and it was a half semi-police state actually before the war.
So I was asking you about your town, and it was interesting to hear, on the one hand, how spiritual and close, and you didn't realize that you were poor. On the other hand, it seems that for as long as you could remember, there was a feeling of anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
And
it was usually outside. You didn't even see any. You didn't see any Catholics. You hardly saw any Catholics. But only the policemen, right? You had to put up with the policemen. And then we heard in 1938 there was a pogrom not far from our town, in a town named Pshitik. It was maybe 100 kilometers from our town. They had a pogrom there. But it never reached our town. But we read about it in the paper. And then we started to read in the paper about Hitler. As a matter of fact, I used to read a weekly. I remember I used to wake up every Thursday morning when the kiosk opened, and they had a weekly called the Weltspiegel, and they always had an article about literature, an article about world history, events of the week. And one time it was Mein Kampf was serialized, and I already by then we started to worry about Hitler. That might have been one of the reasons that at 15 years I later escaped to the Soviet Union.
How old were you when you read that paper?
Maybe at 12, because uh, we didn't talk much about sports, but we used to have lectures like that about different political parties, and every day you could go to different places and listen to a lecture.
Were there any movies? You mentioned like
Yeah.
lectures. It makes me think of.
We had a movie theater. There wasn't that many movies actually. When a movie came, it was event. I remember there was a classical movie called The Dybbuk, and it came to our town, and they would come to the synagogues and give out handouts, and everybody would go and see it, and it was a whole event. Everybody would talk about it. I think I remember my brother, your father, would tell me the story about the Dybbuk, and then I went to see it, and it was a whole event. Not too often, really. You didn't go like every week, but we had one, I think, like 2 movie theaters. We not necessarily saw Yiddish movie, we saw general movies too. But I think for one you probably couldn't afford to see it that often. And I think they probably didn't show that many movies.
Any theater at all?
Theater, we had a little bit of theater, yes. I remember one particular, I remember one came from England, a Jewish play. And I even remember some of the contents of that play. Not too often, but it was right. They had shows, and they had their own, all those parties too had in their locals there. They put on little shows besides that.
I was going to ask you, you said every morning you got fresh bagels or fresh flats. So this was pretty common that every day your mother went out, would shop for everything fresh each day?
Right, that was common. You didn't, well, for one thing, nobody had a refrigerator. We didn't hear about things. I just think it's a refrigerator. And secondly, who would want to eat a stale flat from yesterday? We usually had, everything was, breakfast was fresh and dinner was fresh. And that's why I think it was very hard on my mother, but as far as I know, she didn't seem to complain. She was happy if her children were happy, and her husband had a meal in time.
Did she have like a little push cart or a basket?
No, all I remember is a basket. You didn't shop for a week, you shop for one meal. You didn't drive, you had to carry everything. I would go sometimes to the market.
What did the market look like?
That stands, I think, twice a week. No, once a week they have a big thing where the peasant came with their stuff. And besides this, I think as far as I remember, every day she would go shopping for food.
Now, could you buy clothes at the market too? Where did you get your clothes?
Clothes you had store. You go to a dry goods store first, and you pick up the clothes, and then you go to a tailor, and he measures you. Here you would probably pay a lot of money for things like that, but probably it was cheap. They also, I think they sold ready-made stuff, but usually the peasant would buy it. We wouldn't buy that. It wasn't considered nice to have a ready-made suit.
How many outfits would you say? Like, what did your mother have? Did she have?
My mother, I don't know. I know I had one for shop, forever was one. Every Pesach probably I would go and would get a suit, and I would wear it every Saturday, Friday night and Saturday morning. And during the week, maybe I will have a couple of changes, little changes. But I remember the suit I still had. I'll tell you later from Uzbekistan that I managed to carry all the way to Uzbekistan. I remember even the color was a brick color with the pins. I forgot what you call it here.
Like a knicker?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was what everybody else had, so you didn't worry, you didn't mind really.
And your mother did all of the laundry, all of
The
the chores she did.
the laundry, right by hand. We had a big round, we call it a ballier. You put hot water and you had, I think, a board. You've seen it.
Yeah.
I've seen it here too.
A
I used to
washing
sell
board.
it, a washing board. It was hard work, probably once a week.
Now,
Yeah.
did you own one of them, or was that in like a?
No, we owned, every family had one. When you got married, you made sure you people
Had what they needed?
would eat. Yeah, would be among the presents would be all the stuff that you need
Now,
to run a family.
did she have friends, your mom?
Yeah, of course, on Saturday or whenever. She seemed to have, first of all, on Saturday you didn't do any work. She seemed to manage to get in the evening to get together with friends and talk. Yeah, of course, female women would get together and talk or walk. We had a park not far. We had a place. We walked mostly on Saturday. Yeah, across the street from us was a church, and they had a big yard. So we would go over there.
Now, it sounds like you were younger than your brothers. Did you know your grandparents at all?
I didn't. I vaguely remember one grandmother who died very young. That's all.
And were they from the same town?
Yes. And the thing, yeah, I didn't know. And I didn't travel out of town. The only place I traveled out of town was to my brother. He got married. He got married in I think in 31, because I have a picture and it says the date of 1931.
Did your parents, how did they meet? Do you know? That was an
I don't
arranged.
know. I'm pretty sure it was arranged because it was from another town too. Yeah, I know even a little town. I remember the name too. Near Suchoyeje. In Yiddish it was Nesrish.
And who was from there?
My father was there.
Your father.
As a matter of fact, he had a different accent. Like I remember that, like kids sometimes say, you think it's smart, that I said a smart and give my tat and tie and give the mom and tay, because my father pronounced the tay and my mother pronounced the tie. So one time I said something, give my tat and tay and my mom and tay, so they thought it was a big chokhmah. So that's why I remember they had different accents, because he came from a different town, Berlin, and ours was considered central Poland. So we had a little different Yiddish accent.
Okay. So they thought you were being disrespectful, or?
No, on
No.
the contrary, they thought it was very.
They thought it was.
I was born when they didn't expect me already. My father was around 50, my mother around 40. And I was very spoiled, and probably anything I said, they thought it was smart.
Okay. They thought that. Do you remember them as very strict, or?
No, although I wouldn't do anything, especially my father. The worst thing would be if he would give me a dirty, not really a dirty look, a mean look. Only one time in my life, I remember I called my father Tati Schmate. You know what shmata means?
Yeah.
Shmata means he called me a bulwan, and I called him Tata Shmata. Something I did wrong or something. You know what a bulwan is?
Mm-mm.
A bulwan is an ice. What do you make from a snowman?
Oh.
It meaning that this was the worst if you want to somebody the worst you can tell about somebody a bulwan, it means you don't have any brains, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the only time in my life. Otherwise, it was very. He never beat me.
He was angry when you called him that.
I think he called me first bulwan though.
Right.
And I started crying and I called him Tata Shmata. And that was the end. He didn't say anything else.
Okay.
This is the only incident I remember. My mother, I think, would beat me, not often, but I respected more my father. My father was respected in the whole town, actually. They would come, I think, always came people and asked advice, because he was learned in Talmud, and in that culture, if you knew, if the more you know the Talmud, the smarter you were. They seem to know you know everything, even not necessarily about Jewish law, but even about business. They would come and ask advice. So he was very respected in the whole town and in our family too. So you wouldn't say anything. This was the only incident I must have been really angry at that time that I called him Tata Shmata. So you see, I still remember till today. And I still remember, I must have been like 5 years old when I called him Tata Shmata. For some reason, I still remember it.
It sounded like he was very well respected.
Yeah, I definitely was respecting the whole town and by everybody.
We were talking about your mom going out and shopping. And I was curious about how many times did she go out? One time or?
Once in the morning for breakfast, it was quick, probably a few minutes. There was a bakery around the corner. And I remember it was always warm bakery, like flats, and we had some butter and probably some milk. And then later after that she slowly went up to the rest of shopping for dinner.
Kids are whipping it out. They send
So
it to
for
reinforcements.
lunch, what did she do? Like, what did you have?
For lunch we probably took to school. Nobody was home for lunch, so probably took with us something for lunch. And then for dinner usually was in the evening. What I remember, not that late in the evening.
Did you go to synagogue on a daily basis or more just on Shabbat?
Definitely Friday night and Saturday morning and Saturday evening. And often, if possible, in the morning and the evening too, every day.
Did some people go more? Like, did your father go more than you since you were younger? Or your brother, who you said was more religious, I think Avram?
I think about when my father lived, we went probably every day. And after he died, we didn't go that often. I also remember one time my brother Herschel, we suspected that he went in the morning and came back fast. So one time I followed him, and sure enough, he walked around some street and came back home without going to the synagogue.
Yeah, this was after your father had died?
Yeah,
Now,
but it was during the week. For Saturday, he would definitely, Friday night and Saturday, we still, that was a given. Like during the week, he was the first to start. And I think I probably also started to skipping.
how old were you when your father died?
I was 14. He died in 1938.
Was he sick?
I'm not sure. He had all kinds of sickness. I think he died from tuberculosis. It was very prevalent. They didn't have really a cure at that time for tuberculosis. I think my sister 2 times when he died.
Did you have doctors that you went to?
Yeah, we had doctors came to our house and they gave prescription and but I don't think they had much cure because I know many people died from tuberculosis.
Were there any vaccines like we know today for anything?
I don't remember. I think they were vaguely remember. I don't remember any vaccine.
Okay, so if you were sick, pretty much a doctor always came to the house.
Yeah, I remember that. I even remember the name Dr. Wahlberg. He used to come to my house.
Not when you were well, just when you were sick.
Right. Yes. It was an organization which did, I think, do annual checkup. It was a Jewish health organization. I remember the name, TOS, in Polish, Towarzystwo Ochrony Zdrowia, Society for Health, guarding the health. I'm trying to translate from Polish. So they had something, but not as much. They didn't have the technology that we have today.
And I think you said what, Wahlberg was his name?
The Dr. Wahlberg was the one who came, a private doctor.
Now he was a Jewish doctor?
Yeah.
Now would only a Jewish doctor be a doctor for Jewish people? Was it kind of like that, or?
Actually, there was it was anti-Semitic as far to getting into university was hard. I happen to remember that the doctor, the only doctor I remember was a Jewish doctor. And there weren't many doctors in our town actually. It was a small town. And,
What was the nearest university?
university, there was no university in our town. As far as I remember, majority people just went to school. It was a highly agricultural. I think illiteracy was very high there, although not among Jews. The Jewish people, like from 4 years, even home they taught you. I probably could write a Yiddish letter at a very early age, maybe 7 or 8 years old, and then a Polish. But majority people, if you finish 7 years, that was about. After that, it wasn't free, and it was hard for Jewish people to get into schools. And I think it was mostly agriculture. I think majority of people were employed in agriculture, and I think a lot. I don't know the statistic. Illiteracy was very high among non-Jews. But Jewish people they know Yiddish, and then, for example, my father wouldn't send to public school my 3 older brothers because he was afraid they wouldn't be religious, they would mix with other kids and wouldn't be religious. Only with me he decided that it's the new times that I would get a secular education. My brothers too got educated, but they had tutors coming home who like my oldest brother Zavu, he was quite educated, and the other brothers too, but they wouldn't send him to public school.
Now your public school, when you say secular, there was all different there was Jewish and non-Jewish students there?
Right. I happened to go to a school was all Jewish, but they had other schools with a mix too. In my school, the same building, I remember it was 3 floors, and one of the middle floor was a Jewish school, and the other 2 were Catholics and others.
And did you have much to do with them, the other kids?
We had to, I don't remember, I think we didn't mix that much. Usually the Jewish kids stuck to the Jewish and the Catholics stuck to that. Although the teachers were mostly non-Jews. And even in front of us they were a little anti-Semitic. Even remember to this day one teacher said, you eat Polish bread, you eat, even the Jews who were there maybe for 500 years, they'll still consider them strangers. Not like in America, you're a Jewish in America as just the same as anybody else. But in Poland, if you were a Jew, you weren't a Pole. Either you were a Pole or you were a Jew.
I was wondering, I remember you said your mother had a wig.
Yeah.
Did you follow a lot of the Orthodox traditions?
Yeah.
Did you have tefillin? Was your hair long until you were 3?
I had a little bit pace. Till I started to go in school, I couldn't. They would make fun. In public school, you probably couldn't. You couldn't wear during the class. They would let you wear a kippah.
The teachers wouldn't?
And that's why my father wouldn't let the other 3 brothers go. And we had religion as a subject, so the Jewish kid would learn the Old Testament, and the Catholics would learn whatever the New Testament. Even I remember, but it was all in Polish. I remember even we started in the morning with a prayer, but it was the Shema translated into Polish. I still remember that.
Can you recite it in Polish?
Yeah, Słuchaj Izraeli, wiek jest nasz wiek jest jeden. The same like this, exact translating of Shema.
And when you talked about after your father died, kind of getting a little less religious, was that all of you? Was that your mother as well?
No, not really. We didn't dramatically get less. We still kept kosher. My religious brother was religious, but we suspected, my religious brother once had told me that we think Herschel goes in the morning and comes back too fast. So I said, I'll go and follow him. But they didn't.
Some discussion has come up that we were wondering if you went to synagogue altogether, and also, you know, if Avram was saying that Herschel came back too quickly and you were able to follow him, how could...
Well, we went, this might have been, first of all, after definitely was after my father died. But Avram was still continued exactly. Of course, kosher was still kept, and Friday night and Saturday everybody still went to the synagogue, but during the week was a little less observant. And maybe Avram still kept till the last day, yeah. And I also thought, I got to fill in. I would use him every day. And I don't remember, maybe just before the war, maybe I didn't use either.
Do you think that there was some sort of relationship, some sort of connection between your father dying, the war coming, getting possibly less religious?
Between my father dying, yes, less. You wouldn't want to upset my father. And I think maybe even when my father left and my father went away to the Hachshara, I explained to you before, in order to get a certificate to go to Palestine, you had to go away and do some work. So the atmosphere there, I think, was less religious.
Your father left to get the certificate?
No. Even my brother Herschel left.
Right.
They left. I know where he went to the south of Poland, where they worked all kind of manual work.
But then they wouldn't honor it. Is that what you said before?
No, the atmosphere there was less observant.
Okay. Okay. But then I thought he got a certificate, but
He did not get a certificate. The war started.
Okay.
And he didn't.
Can I ask a question? I remember a story about how your father decided not to come to America. Like
Yeah.
he could have come to America, but he decided
Right,
not.
he
You
had
want to tell us
twice-
about that?
My cousin from Baltimore sent him twice for fair, but he didn't want to go to America because he was afraid he wouldn't be able to practice religion. Which he was right. Many people they were very observant in Europe, and then they came to America, and they stopped.
how did your cousin come to live in Baltimore?
My cousin came after three cousins here. They came after World War One. A lot of people were. I think they started the quarter system in the 20s. I don't remember. It was much easier. Right after World War One, there was a big wave of migration to America, and then they started with quarters. So many people could come from each country. And I know they all had, at least one I remember had a grocery store in South Baltimore. We had a picture in our wall. Actually, the same group of people went in the 1920s. They took a picture, and then 8 years later, they were on a reunion. And 8 years later, on the picture, they looked younger than in the first. Partially, they also dressed different, and maybe they had a better life.
Can I ask another couple? So I remember my father telling me a story how he was a rebel because he didn't wear a beard. So
Right,
did
that
you
makes
wear a
sense.
beard? Did he?
I don't remember anybody. As far as I remember, none of my brothers wore a beard. Zangel didn't wear a beard either. Maybe this I don't remember. Maybe my father wanted him. I don't know. That was probably before my time.
But I mean, did most of the people in Chelm have hats and beards and
They all
bays
wear
and the whole
hats.
thing?
From the older people, they all had. I think the new generation didn't already. Many of the new. You could actually there's a law. You can. It says you shouldn't shave with a knife, but I think my brother Avram had a cream, a kind of a cream to put it on, and then he scraped it off. They were allowed. And Herschel and Zauer, I think they probably. I have a feeling they shaved with a blade.
Did you wear the hats?
Yeah, I was. As a matter of fact, we didn't wear the same in school. The school required a certain uniform and a hat. When I came home, I changed what we call a Jewish hat to go to the cheder. And this too, I remember one Saturday afternoon, Herschel walked. Typically we walked in a park. And I remember one time seeing him walking without a hat.
So how many hours a day was public school and how many hours was cheder? What was your schedule?
I usually in the morning I went to public school, and then I came in the afternoon I went to cheder.
Till when?
Pretty late. I don't remember. Maybe school was till 1 o'clock, and then came home from 2 to 5 to 6. But the evening for supper was home.
I had asked you about opportunities to go to America. Did you, as a family, have any feelings about that?
Oh yeah, we always dreamt about going to America. And then they became Zionists, we wanted to go to America, and then we started to have a feeling for Palestine. So we had a conflict, plus it was hard. They were limited. The British got the mandate in 1917 over Palestine, and they had the Balfour Declaration to create a Jewish home in Palestine. But then under the pressure of the Arab, they limited the immigration. So we always wanted to get out of Poland, really.
And when you say we, did you as a family discuss
As a
it?
family and many Jewish people.
Were there some people who felt differently within the family?
No, we always dreamt America was a dreamland, and then you had the feeling for Palestine.
Now, did you feel at all upset that your father had said, no, I don't think we'll go, or?
We weren't. I don't remember discussing too much. I think that was before I was born. I was very little, so there wasn't too much discussion. It was more like a dream. We had those letters from America, and we realized that they did very well. I remember we had a picture of a store. It looks very lucrative business. So, and plus we heard about the freedom. I remember one time they have a Jewish hour on the radio. They had a Siyum on the radio, and it would be unheard of for us on a Polish radio. They would have a Jewish hour. So the anti-Semitism plus economic was a big attraction. On the other hand, there were many people like my father that they wouldn't want to give up the Orthodox way of life, so they didn't go.
Were you aware of things that were happening all over Europe?
I was very aware. We all, like I said before, we all read different newspapers. I especially read one weekly who was very informative. And usually the kids got together, we didn't talk sports, we didn't have that much. I think we did have a Maccabi organization, but very little room was in the newspaper or in conversation. From a very early age, we discussed ideology, or we went to different speeches, and we were quite informed about politics and things.
And how did it come that you left? How did it come that your brother left? How was it decided? I guess
Are we going that path? Yeah.
Your father died.
Yeah.
And these things were happening in the news.
No, 138, and the war started in 39. So on September 1st, the German attacked Poland, and then a few weeks later the Red Army attacked from the other side, and they were already in our town. I even remember they put a poster in Polish and in Russian, and from that poster I learned they have a different alphabet, they have different symbols, But from the poster I learned, most people knew Russian because till 1918 our town was in Russian hands. And we passed by, so what is this word? So, and yeah, they came in, and then Hitler and Stalin divided Poland. in our town, they let us know that our town, that the Germans are going to come to our town. So I had a brother who was Zandl, who was married and had a store, and his part was in the Russian, his town in the Russian part, and our town was in the German, but it only was about 40 kilometers from each other. So he said first that he'll go and go to be with my older brother. And my brother, Avram, said he's not going to go. So my brother said she must stay with him. And I said I'll go too, even though I'm 15, because from the Jewish soldiers I had those free education. That probably was, and plus I had read my Kampf, what Hitler said about the Jews. So I decided to go. So I walked most, I wasn't the only, there were many other people. I walked probably most, took us a day maybe, most of the part from our town to Lubon. And then I stayed there, but it wasn't comfortable. And the Soviet regime registered us who wants to go back home to the Germans and who wants to go deeper into Russia. The people who registered to go back home to the Germans, they were sent to Siberia. And the ones who registered to go deeper to Russia, they sent special trains. I remember Herschel was even they organized, he was the commandant of a train. They had freight cars, and they organized, each car had a captain, whatever you call it. And Herschel was the captain of one of them. And they sent us to a town deep in Ukraine named Konotop. And they actually took good care on us. I worked for 4 hours and I went to school.
And did you stay with your brother Herschel?
Yeah, we stayed together the 2 years. Although the beginning we stayed several people in a room. Then we had a room with a private company, with a private family. But we stayed from the end of 39 till June of 41, so we stayed together. It was relatively not bad.
And were you in touch with your mother and your brothers?
She came, yeah, we was in touch with Zandl. We wrote cards. Of course, we were careful not to say anything bad about the government. Everything was censored. We knew if we say something, that we too would be sent to Siberia. If we wanted to say something, we had to hint. And my mother came one time when we still were in that little town, Lubon, and she brought a blanket, I remember. But she went back, she had to take care of another. Very beginning, and then we didn't hear anymore from them.
Where were they during that time? They were still in the town?
Well, they were still in Helm for a short while, and then I heard they marched them, I don't know when. There were several concentration camps not far from Helm. One was Majdanek, that was near Lublina. You probably heard a concentration camp named Majdanek? Yeah. And another quarter to Helm, Sobon, there was a movie about it.
Yeah.
There was an uprising, actually, several hundred people survived. That too was near Helm. So, in one of those places they perished. And then in 41, the German again attacked Ukraine. In the place where I worked, they evacuated all machinery and people, they evacuated to Siberia. But I didn't want to go to Siberia, so it was a chaos. Like you jumped, a train started to move, you jumped on it, you jumped off before it stopped. So after several months, I found myself in Uzbekistan.
So that means you separated from your brother Herschel.
Oh, right, as soon, right days after they took my brother in the Red Army. Not on the front, but he was in the working brigade. He was under Stalin, actually. Stalingrad. He built trenches and things like that.
Because he was older, or?
Right. I was then 17 and he was 28.
Okay, so wait, when you got separated from my dad, you didn't really have a plan of how to meet again, and you.
There was no plan. But there was a whole that you took in the army. There was no communication. It was a whole chaos. When the German attacked, it was a whole chaos. You could go any place.
Okay.
And I did. You didn't have to buy a ticket, so.
You know, before you said something about what you took with you. You mentioned the brick suit, and I'm just.
I remember because when talking about languages, Uzbek, I knew one time Uzbek, but I completely forgot. Except one sentence, for some reason, stayed. I have a picture of that. The old man, he was an elder of the village, and he said in Uzbek, and I remember it's still in Uzbek. They gave me a Muslim name, Absalom. That Absalom, it sounds better in Uzbek, but in translation, Absalom, in his own home, he would walk around like a human being. Because that was a very hard time. People didn't have any food, let alone any clothes or any soap to wash. For some reason, I don't remember why, one time I put on that suit I still have, and I washed up, and I walked around in the village, and he looked at me and he said I look like a human being. That's what I remember. I remember his name, Eitwaker. They used to sit long hours in tea houses and talk. That's why, and I talked with them. That's how I learned Uzbek.
Now, were these Jewish people as well, or
Who?
the people in Uzbekistan, or were they?
I didn't know any Jewish. I had this one person who was a Romanian Jew, a Jewish boy. He still tried to smoke, and he would give away his last piece of bread for a cigarette. Or for if you let him, if he smoked, outhale, and he would inhale from your mouth. And he wouldn't. We worked a little bit in the fields, but we didn't get paid. So he said I wouldn't go to work for nothing. And I said I'll go. I won't do much work. But when you there, at least they fed you. They give you the stuff that to house and give you a soup or whatever, a little flat, I think that.
Now, were you able to follow the news of what was happening as you were on the run? Or?
There was big censorship, and they only had the kind of a radio. They only had one station. It was a Russian station. We only had the Soviet side, of course. And more or less, we knew when the German retreated, so we knew that. And it wasn't the newspaper. I was able to read the newspaper and to listen to radio. It was the kind of regular. I remembered by wire. There was wire from the station to each house. They didn't want anybody to have any radio to hear foreign news. They only wanted to hear the Soviet side.
So once you were there, I guess, in the Soviet Union and the Ukraine, you no longer were able to hear really what was going on with the concentration camps and with Hitler. You heard all of
No,
this.
but I did hear, but I read the first a year or two was bad when I was in the village in the kolkhoz, but then I came to the city and I got a job in a restaurant. So since then I had no problem with food, and I also made a little money. They paid me a little, and a little money I made illegally.
And where was this?
This was in Uzbekistan. I worked, the restaurant was attached to a factory that they called them, that's in English too, gins. You separate the cotton from the, and my
Like a gin mill. A gin mill?
A gin mill, right. It separate the cotton from the,
Cotton mill.
and my job was to supply, they didn't have any wood and my job is to supply the restaurant with fuel. And officially, the only kind I could get, I went to in the factory, and some of the cotton was the seeds. The seeds usually went for oil, and the cotton for clothes, but then they had some were no good seeds. It was my job to collect it and bring it to the restaurant. So that's what I did, and I managed a little bit to sell, not to bring it straight. With money already, besides I had all the food, so I already had money to buy some clothes. So after that it wasn't bad already. From 41 to 43 I think was the worst time, 43 to 46. But relatively not so bad.
Now you probably had did you have papers? Did you have?
Read newspaper, yeah.
No, did you have identification papers, anything?
I think so, I don't remember. Yeah, we had to have an identification paper. Yeah.
I mean, did people ask you if you were Jewish? Did you wear a star?
No, there was no discrimination, there was no Jewish discrimination. Stalin got paranoid, I think, after I left the Soviet Union, later years. Actually, what I remember, what I heard in the early years of the Soviet regime, Jews had better than other folks because they were more, after they got rid of the Tsar, many Jews were more for the Soviet regime than not. So Jews had it good in the first years of revolution, and when I was there, I didn't see any anti-Semitism as far as that's concerned. They did. I think you needed to have, everybody needed to have some document, and it was stamped your nationality. And nationality doesn't mean where you born, it means it goes from father to son. So you're always Jewish, not religion. There was no religion, but they would call you nationality Jewish or Ukrainian or Russian or Uzbek.
Or Polish. So Jewish. So the religion was your nationality as opposed to
Your ethnicity was your right, not religion.
your ethnicity.
Yeah. In Uzbekistan, a year or two was very bad too, because when the Soviet overran the Ukraine was the place that supplied food for the rest of the Soviet Union. Uzbekistan were growing cotton and they made money from the cotton. But then in 43 what they did, instead of growing cotton, they grew wheat again, so it was enough. So from 43 to 46, from 41 to about 43 was bad.
And when you say bad,
But people died from starvation. So a guy who shared a room with me died from starvation. I too probably walked around with bones, no meat on it.
where did you get food?
There was a little rationing, like they would give you, say, 2 pounds of flour. That's it, nothing else to it. So you cooked it, you mixed it with water, and that's what you ate. And that's how you lived, without any fat or anything. till, I don't know exactly, it was a year or two, something in the, then when I went to the city, then, since then, relative of me, I had enough food, and I had a little money to the side, but, everybody stole at that time, so.
Okay, I know you were very young during all of this. I'm wondering what kept you going.
I hope. I never gave up hope. I knew, I always believed the Germans and the Soviets won't last long. I always had my faith in the Western powers. Democracy will always win. Always imagine that I thought they'll march in Uzbekistan. I thought, but it didn't. And I always hoped that nightmare will end.
Now the war ended,
In '45.
and when were you in a refugee camp?
The war 45, and then they, in '46, the Soviet government as any, they organized it was a Polish organization. I remember the organization, we call themselves the Polish Patriots. And they ask anybody who wants to go back to Poland. So they sent us back to Poland. But we came back and there was no Jewish life, there was no home, there was nothing.
I know that my father had to sneak out of Russia. He couldn't just take a train out of Russia. But for you, you were able to just take a train
because
straight
he came
out.
out, he went in '45. They organized it later. I came legally with supplies and everything, this organization. As Poland was at that time a Soviet satellite, and going back to Poland is like going back to your friends. So we were, in '46 they did organize official trains.
Well, I was curious when you got back to Helm, what you found.
I didn't even go back to Helm. When the Soviet government arranged trains to go back to Poland, we were told there's no Jews in Poland. In the same time, the representative from Jewish organization from Palestine came and they arranged kibbutzim in Poland. So that way I went, I jumped straight from the train in a kibbutz.
In Palestine.
No, you couldn't go in Poland.
In Poland, okay.
So I had no worry. We came in the kibbutz and they gave me a room, and they gave me food and they clothes, and they came and they taught you Hebrew song and Hebrew, and they're happy, and they told us we are going to go illegally to Palestine. So after a few months, in the kibbutz I worked a little. We worked outside a little. I remember I worked in a bakery for a while. But every year I went to the kibbutz and they gave me. And then we went illegally. They gave us some illegal papers. I think I was like a German. And on the way to Palestine, we stopped in Germany. And they put us in the meantime in a refugee camp. And then while I was in a refugee camp, I saw a list of survivors, and my brother, his father, was his name. His name wasn't it. So of course I sent him a telegram.
Where did you send it to?
It was an address of the survivors, and he was in another refugee name called Fernwald, near Munich. And so after a few days, in that camp I worked in the office of the police. And I was sitting one time in the office and I see my brother. I had a whole bunch of boys who heard about it. So we saw each other for the first time after 5 years. After probably we had given up on each other. And then he told me that he got married. So I went and visited him.
Now, where did he meet his wife?
He met in that refugee camp in the Fairmount. We were talking about it yesterday. He was drunk when he met his wife.
He was drunk.
The story that I remember that he was in love with another girl, Dina. And for some reason he wasn't ready to get married or something. She married somebody else. So for a few weeks he was drinking, and then he met his wife. I don't know how much true this is. So I visited him, and it was a very happy reunion. I remember we were talking about it, that his mother liked always to kiss me in my eyes. Then, but I went back. I loved very much my friends in the kibbutz. I was very happy there. I remember I used to have a big lock of hair. In Russian it's called chupchik. There's a Russian song, a very upbeat song about a chupchik. Usually anytime if we would go in a room at that kibbutz, they would all start that song. So I had a conflict. On one hand I wanted to be with my friends in the kibbutz, and on the other hand I wanted to be with my brother and my sister-in-law. So then one day they sent me a seminar, the kibbutz sent me a leadership seminar. And while I was in the seminar, they told me that somebody wants to see me. And it was my sister-in-law, and said that the same day they're ready to go further illegally on the way to Palestine. And we were separated, we shouldn't separate again. So I decided I joined them illegally on the illegal. They went illegal, but I had a list of that group. But I was illegal in that group. They joked about it, that I joined them illegally on the illegal. And it was a very hard trip down. We had to walk to the Alps. And I remember it was slippery. And I remember one time my brother told me he can't make it up on a slippery road. And I lied down and I stretched my leg out and I pulled him up.
Now, Golda was walking too?
Golda was walking too at that same. We were a whole group of us, but I helped him out. And we arrived in Italy, and they told us we have to wait again. And they put us in another refugee camp together, all of us. We stayed there for a couple of years. And then there's another story about a girl. A friend of mine went to make it simple, went to Australia, and they sent me papers to go there, and I went there. While I was there, they had a chance to come to Baltimore. So they came to Baltimore, and then after a couple of years I joined them in Baltimore.
You were in Australia, you said first?
Yeah, from April 49 till the end of 51 I was in Australia.
And you met someone there, right?
In Australia?
Yeah.
In Australia, the story is about a girl in 1939. I was 15 and I worked and I went to school, and there went another boy also 15, and he had a 10-year-old sister. So I joked with her, sat on my lap, and then in 41 we separated. And for some reason, in 41, a few months later, on the way to Uzbekistan, I bumped into them. We stayed together for a few weeks, and I continued to Australia. And I continued to Uzbekistan. And then when I was in Italy, in a refugee camp, again I bumped into them. They were in a refugee camp about 10 miles from me. So we started to go out a little bit. By then, in 47, so I was 23, she was 18. And she went to Australia and she sent me a permit. Or what they call a landing permit. So I went to Australia. And it didn't work out and I came here. And here in Baltimore again was chance. She came to see a friend that I know, and she told me her husband died. She married, her husband died. But again, she wanted me to go to Australia, but I didn't want. But by chance I met 1, 2, 3, 4 times. I met her by chance.
Do you know what happened to her now?
She lives in Australia. I don't want to go to Australia.
Okay. I didn't know if you
I
had
still corresponding with her.
You are? Okay.
I lately not that much. We still send like birthdays or Rosh Hashanah card we send. They're in touch with a common friend. I have a friend in Bosnia.
Yeah.
And they were together in a refugee camp. And they corresponded. As a matter of fact, they visited them twice already in Australia. She came here in 85. Harold met her in 85 and again in 93. She calls me one time in 85 and Harold was in my house. And she says, guess who is I have here in my house? And I said, Paula. For some reason, we didn't even talk to each other for years. But I have a feeling. And I said, Harold, let's go. You'll see my first love. You remember that?
85?
That was in September 1985.
I kind of remember some of that, but I don't remember. Where were you at were you in the apartment or the house?
In my apartment, yeah.
I kind of remembered Paul, and I kind of remembered that. I don't remember much more than that.
She came again in 93.
She had an accent?
Yeah.
I'm guessing, yeah.
Well, I'm
Actually,
trying to
because
remember-
she
Yeah,
came
yeah.
younger than I, she didn't have as, well, she went there in 47, so she was 18. So she has less accent than I, but she still has an accent.
Well, I don't hear your accent.
All right.
Do you hear it?
A little bit.
I just don't.
No, I hear it.
I remember in first grade they said your dad has an accent. I give him a bus, and I just don't never.
I
hear it.
remember we went to that seminar inside, and you were sitting together, and I told you I'm going to ask a question. Are you going to be embarrassed by my accent? And you said, what accent?
Man, I don't hear it.
Because you're used to me, you hear me
Right.
all the, oh yeah, definitely. One of the reasons that I have accent, well, everybody has if you're not born. I think what I say, over the age of 15 or so, you cannot learn a language without not that I worry about the accent. And secondly, I learned a lot of English still home, and I never learned the right pronunciation.
Now, so your brother and Golda sent for you in Baltimore,
Right.
and you came. How old were you then?
That was in 51, I was 27.
27. And how did you meet Marcella?
Marcella went in 59. We had a store together with my brother, and we had to get out of it because they were in the street. So I was single, I had some money in my pocket. First I traveled a little bit in the United States with a friend of mine, and and then I decided to take a trip to Israel.
Can I check, is that that was the Murveit store?
Yeah.
The picture?
That was the same store first how my brother and Golda had it. They came here around 1950 or so. I went to 49, I went to Australia, and a while later they came here. I think it was 1950. But then when I came in 51, and I worked for them for 3 years, and then I left. And after I left, they had a hard time, and they took in a partner, and that partner backed out, and then they asked me if I would come back as a partner, which I did. But it was still 59. In 59 we had to get out. I had to get out because they widened the street, Madison, Dolphin. It was in corner Madison and Dolphin. Not far, 2 blocks from where I had my store later, the GA Market.
And when did your brother leave? You went to Israel, you met Marcella, you came back with
When
Marcella.
did
He left Baltimore, right?
when I went to Israel, in the meantime they bought us another store. You have a picture from that, I think, something on Hilton Street.
I mean, I don't know where the stores are.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember how, when they got divorced, and then they gave up the store. That's so weird. And then they got divorced maybe around 63. And Golda went first to Montreal, and then she went to Rockaway Beach. And then in 68 they remarried.
Was it 68 when they remarried?
I think so. And then,
So they were divorced 5 years?
yeah. So when they remarried, my brother moved.
How did they decide to remarry?
A little bit because of High, I think.
When was Hy born?
I was born in 1957, in February 57, right?
Yeah.
And they had a little baby. She divorced, and she walked around with the way I see it. I don't know, I may be wrong. That the grass is always green on the other side of the fence. And she thought so, so there's something better out there. And she wasn't so happy in Montreal, so she went to, because she had family in Montreal, a cousin in Montreal. It didn't work out, so she moved to Rockaway Beach, New York, and she bought an apartment. I was like,
Yeah, we had a house with 4 apartments.
4 apartments. She lived in one and rent out 3. And obviously, you're going to show me some letters. They still corresponded with each other. Obviously, it didn't work out so much, and she wanted a father for him. I think that was one. Some of the reasons they remarried. She realized that she'd made a mistake. Marcella also realized that she made a mistake, and she wasn't too proud to admit it. No? Actually, when they remarried, I think they had a better marriage than before. One funny thing I remember, she had in her will, she went to Florida and she had an apartment on her name, and she said he can live as long as he doesn't remarry. Remember that?
But it's interesting to me that the war shapes everybody. You know, the war shaped both of your parents, and
Of
you know,
course.
you as well. You know, it just has such a trickle down effect that some of the experiences that she had, and you know, even the people that you kept passing with, you know, it just.
Well, there was a guy wrote a book called Against All Odds, and he interviewed thousands of people, survivors. He came to the conclusion that it's all individual. Everybody reacted. As a group, we don't do worse than people who did not survive. He quoted figures economically. There's one general, one has the biggest factory of envelopes in the world. The life expectancy is not lower. So it is individual.
Well, you know, I guess.
Let's
Go ahead.
another fact. When I go into singles in PWP, you know, I go dancing. From what I've seen, I see so many depressed people among those who
We're not.
they didn't go through the war.
Mm-hmm.
Probably more. As a matter of fact, I saw myself. I used to have talks, feel good talks with a lot of people. They told me. I remember one guy. He lives in my street. Depressed. Why? Oh, I had one time a job, and I had a wife, and I told him I had a business, and I had my own home. You divorce, you start a new life, and I started a new life. I learned to swim at age 58. I learned for the first time to swim. I learned to dance for the first time. I took classes, so I don't know. It doesn't. You are right. Obviously, it had to have some kind of effect, but I don't think you can generalize.
No. I guess I'm also speaking of not just survivors of the war or the Holocaust as much as sometimes Jewish people in and of themselves as a culture, years of persecution, years of anti-Semitism as well. You know, again, it's what you make of it, and it's your attitude. If you view yourself,
Yeah, well, but it's individual.
it is absolutely individual. I agree. It's what you do with it.
I don't think I think and ever think anything about anti-Semitism. Does it affect you? World anti-Semitism? You ever thought about it? You don't see it anyplace. You don't worry about it. I think, right?
Well, I would say that until the last 4 years, I didn't worry about it.
What happened the last 4 years?
You know, Bin Laden and all that. I
Well,
mean,
that's not anti-Semitic. This goes for the whole West.
well, it seems pretty anti-Semitic to me. I don't know. I mean,
I don't-
America's bad because they support Israel.
That's an excuse.
Do you?
If today the Palestinian-Israeli conflict was solved, Bin Laden would be the same. Wouldn't affect Bin Laden. I live in America, in the best country in the world. A lot of people don't appreciate here the freedom. They criticize too much taxes or too much this or that. You have your freedom, and everybody has the opportunity. I came in Baltimore with a wave, several thousand Polish Jewish refugees who didn't know the language, they didn't have a profession, and they all did well. They all bought homes, and they all sent their children to college, and that they can express themselves. They can criticize the government, which in many, where I grew up, in many countries you couldn't do that. Even when it comes to our election, and people think it's terrible, like last time, November wasn't decided the election, they said it was terrible, and I used to tell people that's nothing. In some countries you would have tanks in the street fighting each other, and here the fight is in the courts, which is not too bad.